Nothing. Nothing but. Nothing but net.
Welcome to Nothing But Net, the podcast for triple net commercial real estate investing. Before we get into the meat of today's show, let's recap on why there's so much interest and buzz around net properties. Triple net properties are commercial real estate investments where the tenants, usually brand name corporations, pay you rent every month. Can you say mailbox money? In addition, they pay the real estate taxes, insurance, and maintenance for the property. No toilets, termites, or taxes. What's not to like? You can remember what net or triple net stands for by using TIM, taxes, insurance, and maintenance. With triple net properties, there's lower risk income and cash flow because rents are guaranteed by strong credit tenants. Preservation of wealth, because rent increases and property appreciation are bulwarks against inflation and a great store of value. Tax efficiency. The government wants investment in commercial real estate, so they provide inducements through depreciation and deductions which shelter income from taxation. Tax deferral, which gives potential for infinite tax deferral with 1031 exchanges, which are very popular in the triple net space. Triple net properties are a tangible asset, and as Mark Twain once said, buy land. They ain't making any more of it. Hello and welcome back to the Nothing But Net podcast, the podcast for triple net commercial real estate investing. I'm your host, Adam Carswell, joined as always by our co-host, Michael Flight, CEO of LibertyFund.io. Today we have Steffany Boldrini as our guest. I'm going to give a little background, a little context, story, bio here in a moment. But before we dig in, Michael, I know you just got back from Miami. So, give us the 30-second rundown, maybe even an update on Liberty Fund. What's going through your mind right now?
It was fantastic. I mean, I just met a ton of on-fire real estate investors that were doing everything from self-storage to parking lots to some were doing net leases. The amount of women coming into the space is just incredible because I can tell you that being in this for, since 1986, it was few and far between. So that is great. And we've got one of the smartest ladies in the industry right now on a podcast with us. But no, the other really cool thing is at the cocktail party, there was all kinds of people coming up to me because they were being sent over say, oh, you're the blockchain guy. And there's just people doing, like one guy was out of Boise, Idaho. He's putting together a real estate, security token exchange. There was a guy who is originally from Italy that teaches at University in Miami and lives in Puerto Rico. And he's a blockchain professor and he's advising a crypto bank that's going to be the fourth crypto bank to get licensing in Wyoming. And the guys from the crypto bank were there. And then I was able to meet with the people from Security Token Group and just a bunch of great stuff happening down there. We went down there early to meet with some other people that we've done joint ventures with in the past. And we're looking at perhaps tokenizing some real estate over in South Africa too. So with that, let's talk about net lease properties. So can you introduce the lovely, the talented, and the exceptional Steffany Boldrini?
Absolutely. And just a quick takeaway from what you just shared. It is interesting to see how, you went to a multifamily investor conference and now blockchain is becoming kind of like a normal topic. I'm sure even a year ago wouldn't have been what you just experienced. So that's really interesting. And then, today we're joined by the legend herself, Steffany Boldrini. I don't even know where to begin, but I know Michael actually introduced Steph and I probably about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I was living in the San Francisco area, and that's where she, I believe, still resides. And I know her Instagram is Hello Silicon Valley, I think, or something like that. But, it's been amazing to see. I know for me, Steph started podcasting around that time. I've had multiple people reach out to me now because they said, oh, I heard you on Steffany's podcast, which was the episode we recorded like 3 years ago. So the fact that people are reaching out to me now, I'm like, man, what is she doing? What's her secret? She's doing something amazing over there.
Blowing it up.
A lot of people know her now. So the host of Commercial Investing from A to Z, that's her podcast. She's invested in net lease real estate, invested in a lot of different asset classes, and has just grown exponentially since I've gotten to know her, as I mentioned about, maybe 4 years ago. So Steph, should have asked you. I mean, I guess we could just say you're a real estate entrepreneur, right? But is there a more formal title that you'd like to go by here today?
Oh, well, first, you guys are giving me way more credit than I deserve. You are way more phenomenal than I am. So thank you for the intro. I think that's perfect. Thank you.
All right. Well, yeah. So the focus of our conversation here today is kind of in the realm of getting started investing in net lease assets. It's something that you have some experience with. And as we mentioned, your capital raising and real estate career is relatively young. And so there's a lot of key takeaways here from someone who's maybe just a chapter or two ahead of where a lot of our listeners are. So that's the direction we're going. But I feel like Michael seems like I can see it. He's already got a question ready to go. So I'm gonna pass it over to him to break the ice here.
Yeah, well, the reason why I thought of Steffany is because I did meet Steffany through the real estate guys. We were on the Summit at Sea together, and she was kind enough to talk to my son and give him some pointers on real estate investing. And she was early on in her investing career. And then I found out that she was very interested in investing in triple net lease properties and shopping centers and things like that. And so then, I've followed her career, followed her podcast, and she's just come an amazing amount of way in just a few years. And so I said, this is all about people, beginning their journey in net lease. We want to make it accessible to them. And so why not bring on somebody that has actually done the steps and, figured out how to do it. And then the other thing is, and I also noticed it at every probably more multifamily conferences, is that in the United States, it's literally the United Nations of the world in terms of people investing in real estate. And Steffany is also a immigrant to the United States. And I just love it that people can just jump into the United States and start investing in real estate. So we're going to cover all of that. So with that, Steffany, why did you gravitate towards triple net versus any of the other asset classes that you could have possibly wanted to jump into at the time?
That's a great question, Michael. And I was blessed enough to have a mentor that I was dating at the time, and he is very, very successful real estate investor, only in triple net and shopping centers and things like that. So at the time, I was in tech sales and started investing in angel investing in tech startups. And just by being with him all the time, at some point, it became very, very clear that real estate is by far, in my opinion, a much better way of investing, at least compared to angel investing, because you have less dibs on so many things as an angel investor. You put the most amount of risk at first, unlike the VCs. They come in, the venture capitalists, they come in later when there's a product and it's working and it's growing super fast. And they can take all of the rights away from angel investors, or a lot of it, to put it very, very simply. And so just by seeing him and talking to him, and it was so clear that real estate was an incredible way of growing and becoming financially independent. And I started asking a billion questions and taking notes. We put offers on a couple of properties, went through the entire process together, and learned a ton about negotiation, about adding value. And there is just so many reasons why retail is a great way of investing in the right place, right?
Okay.
Retail is getting a lot of bad rap, but there's still so much opportunity, and it's not going away.
Yeah. So we're going to back up a little bit and concentrate on a few things you said. So number one, you said you were doing angel investing in early stage startups, and you kind of recognize that you can get a little more control with real estate investing. So is that what really caught your eye, is that you could control the deal a little bit more?
No, it was more, it's a lot less risky, and you can buy more, right? With 100K, you can buy 500K worth of real estate, and so on and so forth. But when you invest in a startup, you have to put that money, and you get diluted over time, unless you put that exact same percentage that everyone is putting. So you need millions and millions to continue owning the same amount of percentage. So it was just because we're able to be sure of where our money is going, and the risks are very, very minimal compared to angel investing.
Sure. So one of the great things we've always talked about is you can leverage real estate, you can borrow against it, and there's an extensive system that you can go to banks and insurance companies and everybody else. And so the other thing that I believe I heard you said is that it's probably much easier to get started if you can find a mentor.
Absolutely. And if I didn't have that today, what I would do is I would become a commercial broker. So if you don't have a mentor or don't have access to one that you can really work closely with, I highly recommend becoming a commercial real estate broker. It can be on the leasing side or on the buying and selling side. The brokerage firm will teach you. If you're hungry in this country, as you mentioned, Michael, you can get to anywhere. That's why I love this place so much, and I really appreciate being here.
Are you a broker now, or are you just an investor?
I'm just an investor right now.
Yeah, I would agree with you. That's how I started out. I started out as a commercial real estate broker, primarily doing leasing transactions because those are the quickest that you can get money out of. And, eventually did and have done sales. And we still have a leasing and management company. But it's really the best way. Whether you do the sales, you can get, deal flow and see how things are, and you can do the underwriting. With the leasing, you understand, where all the money is made, because the leasing in commercial real estate is really, at the end of the day, all your financing and all your purchase price and everything depends on the strength of those leases.
Exactly. And they can get complicated. They are 60 plus pages, right? So
yeah, when I started out, they were like 15 pages. And, the way I explain commercial leases to a lot of people when they see them is, this is just years and years of bad things happening to people. So every bad thing that happens to a particular company or to a particular landlord, they throw it in the lease. So it's like, I don't want that to happen again. So we're just going to document that in the lease. So I have had some that actually go up to 125 pages long. And I've had, there's a particular tenant which I despise, but their letter.
Just one?
Well, there's just one, and they shall remain unnamed, but they're pretty much notorious throughout the industry. But their letter of intent is 35 pages just before you get to a lease.
So, let's dig deeper then. Steph, I know maybe not right now. We mentioned before the interview that maybe you're not underwriting any net lease or triple net lease assets right now, but you've dabbled in the space. So could you tell us a little bit about what you do have exposure to with net lease properties?
Yes. So I was basically working with my then partner at the time, and the experience is basically learning how you can go, into all the negotiation side of things. And when we talk about 60-page leases, there are, two little things that are there that if the tenant forgets, for example, to give you a notice, you can charge 3x the amount of rent because they forgot. So there are all kinds of things that you can do with negotiating the lease. And that's not where it ends, right? You can negotiate on the buy side, and there are many techniques there with regards to the due diligence. I mean, I don't know which side of it you'd like me to focus on, but there's a ton of moving parts.
Why don't you tell us how initially you were trying to find deals, and then kind of the process you went through to evaluate whether they were good deals or bad deals?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I started on LoopNet and we came across Crexy.com. I know it's not the best way of finding deals, but that's where I started. The best way is obviously through relationships, and you get there over time with years of experience. You get access to off-market deals. So that's where I started. And I had a set list of questions that I would call the agent and ask. Some of them were, what's the upside here? Is there a meat in the bone for, us as an investor? Is there anything else that we should know that we will find out later that we should know right now? And so you look at leases. When are they expiring? Who are the tenants? what kind of tenants are they, right? Are they going to be here in the next 5 years or not? How strong are the leases? Does anyone have any right of first refusal? Are there any easement agreements? So really just doing the basic due diligence with about 10 different questions. And from there, if it does make sense, we ask for rent comps and sales comps, and we see, where can this property be when this potential tenant potentially vacates, or when we get a new tenant in these two vacant spaces. So understanding where the value add is and taking it from there.
Yeah, I think people slam LoopNet, and LoopNet isn't as great as it used to be. And I'm not saying that you were slamming them in Crexy, because everybody talks about the off-market deals, and there are off-market deals, and you're gonna, if you show to a broker that you're capable of closing in and you're interested and you know how to make an offer, they're interested in you. But Crexy especially, but also LoopNet, you can use those to get a good handle on, what the market is and how much things cost and how much things priced out. And you can also go and see whether the particular building that you're looking at or the particular property that you're looking at, is it, over market? So it's not only, and you could just get a ton of that information, because I'm going to date myself. We had to actually have to fly to places or to drive, and drive to market and then, take down everybody's phone number and call them. So those are really good resources, and they wouldn't have them if people weren't buying over there. But
and if anything, it's a practice, right? You're practicing asking these questions. You see what their reaction is, right? I realized at some point that they all thought I was an agent when I was calling them. So I had to say, I'm a principal in the beginning of the call. And then at the end, my favorite question, are you okay with dual agency? Oh my goodness, they all perk up when I ask that question. And so that's another, great negotiation tip that he taught me, where the agent will get double commission.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So dual agency is when the seller's agent is representing you as well. So they basically get twice as much commission. So, most of the time they will be very, very happy to get twice as much commission. And in some states, this is not legal. And also sometimes when you have to get, an extra couple $100K or $100K, depending on the size of your deal off, and the seller won't budge, you can always come back to the broker and say, look, you need to chip in a bit because they're getting twice as much, right? So they will be happy to. And sometimes they even offer that. I'll be happy to chip in.
All right. So the key insider tip here is, number one, you identify yourself as a principal so that the brokers perk up because they know that there's not another broker involved. And number two, with the dual agent thing, you're signaling to them that, yes, I do not have another real estate broker involved with this. Or, I'm not just making calls on my own, but I'm going to bring in this other real estate broker, so that they're going to work extra hard to get. So, and that could be a great thing, because if it's in a competitive market and somebody comes in with a broker representing them and you come in as a principal, you could actually end up getting the deal just because of that.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing that I hate to hear is when they say, can you make the difference? So, but we've been in the middle of those squeezes quite a few times.
Got it. I haven't heard that yet.
I think I've had this conversation with you before, but do you have any background in underwriting industrial properties? I feel like
I have not underwritten.
No, not industrial. Okay. Industrial. I was going to take this in industrial net lease direction, but I was wrong.
No, but she has extensive experience underwriting car wash properties.
Car wash. Yeah. There you go. That's a new one for the show.
Area to be in. So how did you find that deal?
And I just want to note something on the industrial side before answering that. I mean, it's probably not a huge difference, right, from the retail side. You just have one tenant or two, and you just underwrite the same way, which is exactly what happened on the car wash. I had no knowledge of car washes whatsoever. I didn't even know what a bay was. I didn't know what a pump was. And I ended up with 3 car washes. And so the way I underwrote it was just like any other asset class. You look at the numbers, and you put your own numbers after you purchase, you know what the cost will be for having a manager on site, because I'm doing all of it remotely. And that's how you do it. It's literally all about the numbers at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And having a good team, of course.
Yeah. And so the really great thing about car washes, and we like them from a triple net lease standpoint, we don't really want to operate them. But what Steffany could do is she could at some point do a sale leaseback with somebody. And so take her money out of the car wash and sell the property to somebody. So she still got the business, but she takes the property money out, kind of recycles that, and she could put it into something else. But the other really neat thing we love about car washes is, as of right now, Amazon or nobody has been able to figure out how to put an app so you can get your car washed online. So,
right, internet proof.
Yeah. So any type of auto service we really like, but car washes especially, because everybody says, well, someday it's all going to be Uber. And it's like, well, Uber drivers still need to wash their cars. They probably need to wash their cars a little bit more. And even if it's self-driving cars, I'm sure you're going to need to get them washed. So, I see the business model lasting a little bit of time, whether it's electric cars or gas cars.
Oh, yeah, it's a long time from now that they won't be needing car washes, in my opinion, and that everything will be Uber and Lyft or pay to use. I think people still will want to own cars because it's getting pretty pricey to Uber and Lyft everywhere.
Right. And especially where I'm from, and Adam's even further north, but he was originally from Cleveland. But, getting your car washed is important in the wintertime because of all the salt that they put on the road around us. So
exactly,
it's a great business model. The next thing I wanted to ask you a little bit about is, how did you learn how to, you had rattled off a bunch of things about leases like options and REAs and things like that. So number one, could you define for us what an REA is? But number two, how did you learn about this stuff? How does somebody first coming into the thing just even know about, what that is?
What is an REA? I don't know what that is.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said an REA. So an REA is...
We can get that though real quick, Michael. Do you know what an REA is?
An REA is a Reciprocal Easement Agreement.
Okay. Oh, yes. The easement agreement. I don't know what R.
I took the reciprocal in there. I apologize.
Not at all.
Yeah. So why would somebody be concerned about an easement agreement?
Because easement agreement is when maybe someone or the government or the property next door has the right to pass through your property, be it through a certain path or something like that. Why? Because what if you want to build a new building in that particular area, or if there are issues with the tenant, you need to understand where the space is at. And if you will at some point have access to that space, if you need to do something to that space. That is, from what I understand,
right.
The benefit of it.
That is perfect. And the other thing in shopping centers and net lease properties is, if it's an out parcel, there's typically a reciprocal easement agreement between the actual shopping center and the out parcel, so that the out parcel isn't landlocked in there, that the customers for, let's say you've got a McDonald's out there, the customers can go and not only pull into the McDonald's, but they can also pull into the shopping center behind it. And the other thing is, if we've had real issues where there was two shopping centers right next to each other, and one of the guys just decided he didn't like the traffic going through. So he put, like guardrails up and cut it off, which, cut off a lot of traffic to our shopping center, and then we had to sue him because it turns out he couldn't do that. So, because especially when you're talking about retail or car washes or things like that, it's really about the amount of traffic that you can bring to it versus, Adam had brought up the industrial. You definitely need traffic, you need access, you need to, have truck access. But other than that, you're not living and, dying, so to speak, as much on traffic. And then how did you learn all about the different, lease clauses that you were talking about? because that's kind of a specialized niche that you typically don't see in other aspects of residential real estate.
Yep. So he gave me his 60-something page lease, and I read every single word in that lease and asked questions whenever I didn't understand anything. And I found a lot of those, not loopholes, but those things that are date bound, right? So if the tenant doesn't do that by this date, then this is going to happen. And I highly doubt that most people are actually managing all of those notices that they have to give. So there is some upside there. Sorry?
I'd be surprised if you're a good operator, and then
exactly.
You're a mom and pop.
Steph's, her net lease journey reminds me a little bit of mine. I had a mentor as well who gave me a bunch of documents to do some lease abstracting with. I wasn't dating him, but he's been a good boss and mentor.
I was just going to say, Adam, can you tell us how you learned about lease? So
I mean, I'll never forget. So I started working with Michael right around the time, as I mentioned, where I met Steffany, and looking back on it, some of the things that stand out to me the most, I just think back to the practice of lease abstracting. I think if you're not familiar with the space, I would think that you probably don't know what it is, because I know I didn't know what it was until Michael handed me a few documents to go through. But basically, lease abstracting is going through these 60, 80, 100-page documents and looking for specific data points that is normally consistent from one lease to the next. And you're just basically simplifying the lease. You're getting all the important information that you need in order to move forward with a deal or a transaction onto instead of a 100-page document, maybe like I'm trying to remember now, Michael, was a lease abstract anywhere from like 5 to 10 pages maybe?
Yeah. So a lease abstract just takes out all the important information. So there's a lot of legal boilerplate. Like nobody ever cares about the condemnation clause unless you get the highway department taking part of your road. And so that's the only time that ever comes up. So I had a mentor in the 90s, and he would always yell at his attorneys and say, I don't want to spend any money negotiating condemnation clauses. He goes, these are the major deal points. So the major deal points are the term, the rent, options, and things like that. So the business deal points. And then there's specific legal deal points. So for example, the type of shopping centers that Steffany was underwriting, the tenant might have what's called an exclusive use clause. So there might be a nail salon in there or a restaurant in there, and they are the only tenant of that kind that can be in there. So those specific, there's, little just legal tripwire clauses that not only do you need to know as an owner, but also banks, in certain situations won't lend on them, because another big thing that you won't see even in industrial leases is what's called a Cotenancy Clause. So if you have a supermarket anchor tenant or a Marshall's anchor tenant, the other national tenants will typically have what's called a co-tenancy and say, if that supermarket goes out of business and is closed, then I want the right to either go to percentage rent or close my store and leave altogether. So that's why sometimes you see these shopping centers just implode. When the anchor tenant leaves, then everybody else leaves. And bankers found out the hard way in the Great Recession downturn that they want to scrutinize those co-tenancy clauses a little better, because they ended up having some of that happen. So Steffany, what are some of the most memorable lease clauses that you saw that when you came across them, it's like, what does this mean?
One that comes to mind that I found it pretty interesting was the dark clause. If you go dark, you have to pay up. Or, as I was briefly mentioning earlier, and by the way, should we elaborate on what going dark is?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so it's basically when a tenant packs up and closes their doors. And so that does not look good, obviously, from a shopping center perspective. So you need to get compensated in another manner, which sometimes people triple the rent if they go dark. And you can also negotiate them getting out of the lease by saying, okay, we will accept a third or whatever, 40 or 50% of the rent, and then we'll let you guys out of the lease. And then you can not only have this huge chunk of money coming in, you can at the same time start looking for another tenant that will make the center look better when it's fully occupied.
And see, that's why I like Steffany, because she's always looking at the positive and the good stuff and all the rest of it. And there's also the bad part of the go dark clause, or the ability for the tenant to go dark. And that is when you have an anchor tenant like Walmart who has the right to go dark and just sit there and pay rent, but just sit there in your shopping center and you can't do anything about it. So in negotiating a lease with them, or when you're buying a particular, whether it's, you don't really care as much if it's a freestanding single tenant net lease, because they're obligated to pay all the way through the remainder. But you do care if you invest in, like, let's say a Walgreens, and it's in front of a grocery store, and the grocery store has the ability to go dark. So most landlords will allow the tenant the ability to go dark, but also have the right to recapture, so that the tenant just doesn't sit there. We had a tenant, we did have the right to recapture, but we had an anchor tenant that was like 90,000 square feet, and 4.5 years into a 20-year deal went dark. So we had to end up working a termination fee out. So it, was a tense negotiation, because at the same time, we had our lenders and we had some of our tenants actually, drop their rents because of their co-tenancies dependent on that. So we ended up doing a buyout and getting money from the tenant, and it turned out to be an excellent deal. But that's one of the hair-raising things that you can get into. But other than that, if nothing happens with the tenant and they pay on time, it's one of the greatest, real estate investments you can get in.
Yeah. And, you have to also keep in mind that replacing that anchor tenant is going to take a lot of time. So do negotiate all of these things. These leases with these anchor tenants can take 2-3 years sometimes, and TI and all of that. So it's important that you take care of yourself as well when doing these negotiations. And everything is a give and take. They will take something, you say, okay, but we'll have to have this as well.
Yeah, it took me 10 years to negotiate one anchor tenant lease. It was the tenant that actually went out after 4 years.
Wow. 10 years.
But we replaced them with a tenant that's in 70,000 square feet and doing probably now close to triple the amount of volume they were doing. So our biggest problem now is there's no space in the parking lot, because these guys are just doing so much volume. It's a grocery store, and it's just fantastic.
Great problems to have, Michael.
All right. Well, we are going to start winding it down here now, a little bit tied to podcasting, because I know you've built out your thought leadership platform and you've been pretty successful with it. What I would ask, what's your recommendation to anyone out there who's looking at getting started with a podcast? Because I know imposter syndrome can hold a lot of people back. But I'm sure, I know just myself included, like you, I've learned a lot along the way by just pressing record and getting in there. So what would be your recommendation to anyone who's thinking about building out their own platform?
Yes. So for me and a few more people, we had that first episode recorded for like 6 months. And we never put it out there due to the fear. And so just put it out. The first is the hardest, and then you'll grow from there. Just make sure you have really good content. That's like something that I really prioritize. Have really good content. Even if you don't do it, for me, I do it every week. Sometimes I do it every other week, because I couldn't find someone really, really good for my podcast, because I want to provide great value, right? So just like anything else, products that you sell, real estate, you have to have good quality and good service in order to grow and for people to come back. That will be my biggest recommendation on the podcast side.
Yeah, and this is the key thing that I think Steffany really sold herself short, because she said she had this mentor and everything. But what I've seen is that you've really educated yourself by getting the type of guest on that you wanted to learn that particular. So can you tell us a little bit about how you went about doing that? Because you systematically got a master's degree in real estate by doing your podcast.
Yep, Michael, just like any problems in the planet, we have to solve them, right? So when we broke up, I said, oh, Lord, who's going to be my mentor now? And I was like, okay, I gotta get that episode out today.
So she
And
crowdsourced her mentorship through her podcast.
100%. And whenever I have a question about LLCs, I'm like, oh, I need to get a good LLC lawyer here and ask all my questions for free. And I'm sure people benefit because if you have that question, everybody else has that same question. And you learn so much through that process. And you build relationships.
Podcast again?
Commercial Real Estate Investing from A to Z.
Commercial Real Estate Investing from A to Z.
And I had you there on the show once or twice, and we had so much fun. You were one of my favorite guests. We need to do it again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you got to have Michael come back and give the Liberty Fund
You can have Adam come back and talk about lease abstracting.
You can do that.
Absolutely. I had Adam in the beginning. I was so nervous. I didn't even know what to ask Adam.
I'll put together a PowerPoint.
Thinking that I have a huge podcast.
No, you've definitely done an amazing job. I mean, we recorded that episode as you referenced, years, at least 2 or 3 years ago, and I've had multiple people reach out to me and say, "Hey, I heard you on Steffany Boldrini's show," and I thought to myself, "Wow, that was a while back. That's really cool to see it's still working like that." So,
and if you do a search on real estate podcast, Steffany's podcast is one of the first that comes up. So,
SEO wizard. You can hire her as a consultant now too, guys. No, so Steffany, what's the best way for anyone to follow up and get in touch with you if they enjoyed what they learned here today?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Steffany Boldrini there, and through my website, montecarlorei.com.
That's montecarlorei.com. So montecarlorealestateinvestment.com.
That's great.
There we go. Then we had to say it 3 times just to make sure our amazing show notes. Courtney nails that one. Courtney, thank you for all the work that you do. And Michael, I think that's all we got. Any closing remarks on your end?
No, I'm just so excited that, we did have Steffany on. Like I said, I've been following her career and just the podcasting, especially if somebody's looking to kind of go through the journey of a, beginning investor, you should really check out, Steffany's podcast. And then the information that you gave us today, Steffany, on just how to even break into net lease properties. Because I find a lot of people come up to me and say, well, it's much easier to do, multifamily. It's like, because everybody's lived in a house. It's like, once you get this stuff and there's plenty of people that have mastered it. And a lot of brokers that, I came up through the ranks with are not the brightest people in the bunch, including me. And so if we can master it, people like Steffany can supercharge it and, just jump right in. So
I agree 100%. And there's less competition when you compare it to multifamily. So more value add, less competition. It's not that hard to learn.
Excellent point there. Because as you said in the beginning, people are just, really bad mouthing, especially retail. And then there's a lot of people that just don't quite understand the whole net lease part. So if you could just take a little bit of time, learn how to do some of these things, you could potentially get outsized returns.
All you got to do is listen to the first 20 episodes of Nothing But Net, and you'll have your master's degree in triple net lease right there.
Well,
exactly.
Combine that with commercial real estate investing A to Z. And
right. You got to listen to both. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the mentioning.
Yeah. All right, Steph. And then I guess flip it over to you here one more time as well. Any closing remarks or words of wisdom for our viewers and listeners?
Just do it. It's going to be nerve-wracking. At the last summit, the 8 billionaire there said that I still get nervous buying properties. So we're all getting nervous signing these documents, and it's okay. Once you get through that and you get through, the problems that you're going to come across, you start learning and you can expand from there.
There you have it. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining us here today on the Nothing But Net podcast, the podcast for triple net commercial real estate investing. I'm your host, Adam Carswell, joined as always by Michael Flight, our co-host and CEO of LibertyFund.io. And we were joined today by Steffany Boldrini, real estate entrepreneur, podcast host. You can check out her website, which is montecarlorei.com. Steffany, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, thank you for investing your time with us here today. and we will catch you in the next episode. Thank you once again for joining us here on Nothing But Net, the podcast for triple net commercial real estate investing. If you enjoyed what you heard today, one last friendly reminder to like, share, subscribe, or leave a review for us. It really helps a ton with the show's visibility. For the Nothing But Net team, I'm Adam Carswell. Take care. Nothing but net. The Nothing But Net podcast is not intended to provide legal, tax counsel, or accounting advice. Adam Carswell, Michael Flight, Concordia Realty Corporation, Liberty Real Estate Fund LLC, and their affiliates do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice or the worthiness and promotion of any particular investment. This material has been prepared for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for tax, legal, or accounting advice. You should consult your own tax, legal, and accounting advisors before engaging in any transaction or undertaking. We highly encourage individuals and investors to seek the counsel of a qualified attorney as well as seek the counsel of a tax professional or certified public accountant to determine if there are any potential tax liabilities or consequences as a result of anything contained herein. All listeners of this podcast or video should understand that there are no guarantees of any success, outcome, or profitability of any transaction or undertaking expressed or implied and will not be liable for any financial or other losses or damages incurred as a result of any undertaking. Go to nothingbutnet.us for a complete set of disclosures. Thank you.